Let's just enjoy the harp being played by young Noel. Thank you, Noel. This boy here is a Mullion boy, fishing in his DNA, over to Barry Mundy to entertain us.
Right. I'm going to try and condense the last 200 years of fishing in Mullion into this evening's talk. Started with my great-grandfather, who started fishing in I'm not going to call it Mullion Cove, I'm going to call it Porthmelon. It's proper Cornish name. And not that I don't know whether I can find them here now. I put them here somewhere. They are not terribly great photographs like that, but if you look at that, you can see all the cliffs are covered in that yellow lichen, which have been there for thousands of years. And especially when you come around Prydanig Headland coming from the south, and you're looking at Mullion Cove, or Porthmelon then, you can see why I think it's got the name of Porthmelon, because Porth means a bay in Cornish, and melon is yellow. So it's Yellow Bay. And I think it's a very fit and apt name for it. Now, we've been 5 generations. Let's say my great-great-grandfather started there in the 1820s, and lifeboat men, and followed up to myself, present day. Fishing went on, obviously, long before that, many centuries. I'll reveal a bit more when I start talking about the lobster pot. But in those 200 years, there's the main fishing to start with would have been autumn and winter time would have been seine fishing for pilchards, or as they call them now, Cornish sardines. And if you had a league table of the whole of Cornwall, St Ives was the mecca. They caught absolutely thousands of tons of them there. But next to St Ives would have come Mullion Cove, or Porthmelon, should I say. And so it was quite lucrative, and that's, I think, why her family came to Mullion. They were resident at Penryn, but they were merchantmen, and they were coming around to the coves like Coverack, Cadwith, Mullion, buying the pilchards. And if you went back a few generations prior to that, they had a family member over in Roscoff in Brittany, which they were exporting their sardines to. So they probably came here for a variety of reasons. One, like I say, mainly was the pilchard industry. The other, because 1640 it was the Civil War, and you didn't want to be too close to Falmouth because you had the siege of Pendennis Castle. So they came away, plus they were still practicing the old religion, which, although a Catholic religion, not the Roman Catholic religion, but the Catholic religion that was here in Cornwall. And although after the Reformation, the church here in Mullion were still practicing that religion. So that's probably another reason why they came. But primarily they would have been coming to buy the pilchards and export to the continent. In the other part of the season, sort of spring and summer, they were catching lobsters, crabs, and crawfish. Lobsters, the Cornish word again would have been legust. Crawfish, they were called gavermore. And a gaver in Cornish means a goat, but gavermore meant a goat of the sea. And if you see the crawfish, they've got these big antennae going back over their heads, and I suppose they would have looked a little bit like a goat. So when I started fishing first with all the older fishermen down the cove, a lot of the names of the fish was conveyed in Cornish, not English or the Latin name, whatever it was, you know. So now I keep looking down at these tamarisk because to catch the lobsters, you made a pot like this, a lobster pot, and it was mainly willow. The main spars were made out of local willows that were grown on the various farms here in Mullion. And the weaving, this spiral weaving around, the local willow wasn't pliable enough. They did have some like ornamental willows that were more pliable that you could use, but they also used brambles, and they pared off all the prickles, but the brambles would have been more pliable for doing this sort of weaving. Since the Second War, at least, these willows that does this spiral was purchased in Somerset, I suppose, now that the railway and trucks were, the commerce was easily transporting things. So certainly from the Second War, probably even between the two wars, they may have been getting the willows from the Somerset. They were grown mainly for the basket makers up there, but they used to buy them for making the pots. I brought this. Now the design of this is reputedly, this takes you back a lot further. The design of this has been said that was brought here by the Phoenicians. Now we know the Phoenicians came here in the time of Jesus because Joseph of Arimathea used to trade into St. Michael's Mount, into St. Justin Roseland, picking up the tin to take back to Phoenicia. And they reckon they brought the design with them because in the Eastern Mediterranean, they used a pot like this for catching crustaceans, but also squid, calamari, octopus. And I've got this theory that if they did bring the design to make the pot here in Cornwall, they would have probably brought with them the material, because you can see a lot of hedgerows around, you know, the coast here and all around Cornwall. You've got this here tamarisk growing. Now it's not an indigenous tree for Cornwall, but it used to grow in the deserts of the Middle East, and they say that in the Middle East where it grew in the desert, it would send its roots down as much as 40 feet to get moisture to grow. But they certainly grow okay here in Cornwall. Plenty of moisture. Now, I've got a little tease now for the locals here. Now, a bundle of willows or a bundle of tamarisk would probably weigh about at least 100 weight. Quite heavy, you know, to carry her off the willow gardens. But this amount here is what we would call a yaffle. Now that's spelled Y-A-F-F-E-L, a yaffle. Has anyone ever heard of a yaffle?
Yeah. Yes. It's a woodpecker.
No?
Armful.
Well, a yaffle translates as an armful from the Cornish language. So, you know, I was told to go and get there might be a big pile of willows there, or just get a yaffle of willows, which meant, you know, I didn't know at that particular time, 30, 40 years ago, you know, that was the actual, but that is the meaning of it. It's an armful. So very descriptive they were. Now, when you started to make the pots, you had this, what we used to call a mould, and you had 12 these standards, as we called it, and put them in these holes in the top, and then you would weave around that part of the mouth. So they'd be all once you'd completed the height that you wanted, the sticks were sticking up, you'd put in another 3 alongside each one, so you had 48. And then you would bend them over, but prior to that actually, because some of the local willows would not be as pliable as they should be. So we used to have like a bench with a piece of tree with leather around it, and you'd stick it in there like this, and you'd bend it around so that it bent, and you'd get that nice curve. If the willow wasn't of good quality, it would break. So you use that bit of the rest of the willow for something else in the pot, you know. Or if it's sort of what we would call knuckle, and I can show you one which that's not too bad there, but you see how it's knuckled there, you know. Well, we were making them really to catch fish. We were making them to be pretty, but on the other hand, if it was a really bad knuckle and it stuck up like this, if the pot sort of went over on its side, it would rub through very quickly, you know, because it would be just sticking up. So you had to sort of bend them. These are quite, you know, the tamarisk are quite pliable. So then you bent them down, and you tied them fast by these strings. And then you've got 2 willows, if you can see there, look, and you stuck one in the mouth there, one there, and then you sort of went over one, under one, and around. And that part of the pot was very important because, well, really from when you start, you always selected your willows so that you had 2 of equal strength. And especially, like I say, there, going around there, if you didn't, the pot would go misshapen. As my father would say, you had to get one willow to work against the other. And the other thing is, you see, you put your hands in there like this and held it tight as you weaved it. And he would say, you know, you have to be master of the willow, not the willow master of you, because if the willow mastered you, it would just go entirely out of shape. And even making the mouth, if you let it go a little bit haywire, that would go all through the pot, and it would make life very difficult, even when you get to the bottom, just to finish it off. You know, it really made hard work. So you had to not rush things, but make sure that you were doing things correctly. Now, the tamarisk we always used for this outer rim here. So if it went down onto the bottom, laid there like that, if you had a rock here like this and it knocked up against it, this here was sort of protecting the main pot. And this buffer sort of thing around the edge was called the chim of the pot. And chim, C-H-Y-M, and chim translates as circumference. So, you know. And then the other Cornish word I've got for you here is this bit here. to get the fish to go down, the lobster or the crab to go down into the pot, you had to put bait in there. So you get a piece of mackerel, a piece of gurnard, conger eel, rayback, whatever, and you speared it like that. So you left a little branch there so it wouldn't go any further, and then you put it down through there, in there like that, and then pushed it in so that you push the, oh dear, there we go. You pushed it in there like that, so you jam the piece of bait on the inside of the mouth. So the lobster or the crab had to go down in there to get up there to feed. And also, that also narrowed down the entrance a bit to prevent the crab or lobster getting back out again. But saying that, the lobster or the crab could get out again. What really kept him in there was the bait. So the bait would last, say, for about 24, 48 hours at the most. So that's why it was necessary to pull the pots every day. But if you had bad weather and you couldn't go for a couple of days, you might be all right. But if you didn't go for a week, you lost majority of your catch. They got back out again. So that's why the newer pots, where the net that drops down behind them traps them in, and they're more efficient than what these are. These are probably more a faster fishing pot than the modern ones, but like I say, they can also get back out again. So that was the lobster in the and the crab, and they would store them in pots which are probably 5 times the size of that, and they would land their catch, say, once a week. And back, I'm talking about back in the 1800s and early 1900s, a small boat would come, well, I say small, a small sailing ship would probably call it in the Scilly Isles, and then he would call it Land's End, Porthquara, and all the little ports in around the Mounts Bay, and he would pick up the week's catch. One thing I haven't brought here with me today is a gauge, and it was something like that, but it had marks on it, and it would have a stop at the end, and you would measure the lobster, and if the lobster, I think it had to be something roughly about 9 inches from the end of the tail to the point of the nose, and if it didn't reach that, then it was 2 for 1. So there was always a argument with the merchant. He would say, no, that's it, 2 for 1, and the fisherman would just, because the tail, you could just slightly stretch it a bit, So there was always an argument over that. And I think the crabs were sold so much a dozen, and that, but again, even in my grandfather's time in the 1900s, they were exporting them to Brittany then. Most of the shellfish went on to the continent. Yeah, and the other thing I've skipped past that, to actually do the bottom. When you got down to this, see this bit was made on this ear, and then when you got down to the last bit there, you prized it off that, and then you turned it over, and these spars would all be sticking up all around. You'd break them off into there, and you'd use this set of strings then, would go across the mouth there like that, and then with those strings you would tie fast the spars in what we used to call fingers. and then it'd be sort of over one, under one, and you would change the stitch here from the second row right in, and then 2 sticks that way, and then 1 right across the bottom to keep it from sort of coming out. So yeah, so that was the main fishery really was. Oh, they did use nets as well for catching likes of big skate and ray, turbot, brill, big flatfish on sandy ground. That was another one, but not the main thing was lobstering, crabbing, and the pilchards in the seasons. Like I say, they would use something like that tied around there, and that would then with a knife, you see all these had to be pointed to stick down into there, into the mould. Like I say, there's that was not just for naughty boys, That was just to, when you finished, you tapped in, make sure they was all in nice and tight. Yeah, I've got a few photographs here. Well, that one's just been taken recently. This is in the net loft down in the harbour, and that's the main one that I'd use for making the bigger pots. And this is my father here making them outside. He's there doing the bottom of a pot in that one, and in his retirement, this is again in the net loft there, and he's just finished making a full-size pot there. Any questions, anybody?
How long approximately did it take to make one?
They reckon if you worked a 12-hour day, which we used to start 8 in the morning until 8 in the evening. If you made 2.5 pots a day, you was really going something, because like the willows and all that, like these had to be trimmed off. You'd probably just leave those few on the end and then cleaned up. And then if you was using, like for the main spar here, that would be trimmed off, cut off to length, and that would be pointed. And any sort of, let's have a look. I'll make a mess here. You just go like that and make sure all the, because they catch your hands and rip your skin. So we would, I know my father would sort of be probably making the tops, and I would stop about 3:30 in the afternoon, and from 3:30 till 8 in the evening, I would be just trimming all these up, and then father would stop and he would point them. And some of the willows, which were say a little bit bigger than my thumb perhaps, and would split them down the middle, just like that. I don't think I can even do it with a, no, they don't split like a willow, but and so some of these spars would be sort of half split down in half. Yeah. So yeah, it would take about 2.5 pots. He was going pretty well.
And what kind of farmers would have supplied you locally?
Well, we had the nearest garden from here would have been down at Trimbell, and that was on the Colroger farmland. And then we had 1, 2, 3, 4 willow gardens at Clare Garden. That was Mr. John Gilbert.
Williams now.
Pardon?
Williams?
No, Clare Garden would have been the Gilberts. Yeah.
And did you pay the farmers for the what you took?
No. Well, no, it was a bit of barter.
Right.
You know, in the summer they would either have, I think with Mr. Gilbert, we used to, I think your mum used to like, no, yeah, your grandmother would like pollock, and we used to drop her down to.
Fish or crab or
Oh yeah, money didn't pass hands like that. It was always a lot of barter, and it was a far better system, because when money gets involved, you think, oh, he's done me, he's charged me too much. But when you barter some, so we had the willows, which was okay, you know, we felt okay about it, and they had the shellfish. A lot of the farms used to like you know, the big male crabs in the season, and they had something they liked and wanted. You know, it was different to their normal. You know, so you never felt cheated then. And also the willow gardens we had was of no use really to the farmer, because it was always wet and boggy ground. You know, I used to be up to your knees in mud and water. It was quite hard work actually, and full of brambles and thorns and so on. You know, but yeah, that was when you had a day's cutting willow. That was really hard work, and I think that was the only time my father would say, "No, boy," he said, "we'll have a drop of rum." Sorry?
Are there still places where willows grow?
I doubt it, because you see, the last time that I made willows, what I call in anger, was with my father, and that was 1969. So we didn't cut them no more after that, and they would have just grown up into trees. They could easily be made gardens again. The other thing with the local willow is that you could only cut them every 2 years. If you cut them just 12-month growth, the pots would go kisky, as we would say, and rotten. But 2 years, they were mature enough that they would be okay. Different to the Somerset willow. You know, you get them every year. That was no problem. They were a different willow. Yeah. Yeah.
How long does one of those pots last? What's the life of the pot?
24 hours sometimes. No, we have had that. You know, we put them out to sea, and that's why we always tried to start fishing perhaps the first week in April, because, you know, at the end of March you've got the equinox, which is 18th, 21st of March, you know, when the sun comes back up over the equator, and you always get quite a severe gale. Sometimes it's early, sometimes it's late, but we'd like to see that gale or storm go through, and then we'd put our pots out. But sometimes in May we would, not so much wind and that, but there would be obviously deep depressions in the Atlantic, and we'd get what they call a groundswell coming in, and the groundswell, the sea is on the bottom. You know, when you see the white tops and that is not necessarily rough on the bottom, and they're okay. But no, we have put out brand new pots and never seen them again.
And how many would you have on a line, on a string?
In our old boat, we used to work strings of 21. That's the maximum we could get. On the shore, we used to perhaps have shorter strings of 15. Yeah. But yeah, but they would last a season, and if you was lucky, yeah, you'd have some that would do the next year, but they were getting pretty ropey then, you know. But if they got damaged, we'd bring them in and put new spars down and tie them up with a bit of rope and that sort of thing. Also, I'll show you we used to the pot that was on the end, because when you had them in your string, this last pot, the rope went up to the surface with cork marker buoys. I could have brought some of those tonight as well, and a marker, what we call a dan, which was on a pole with a flag, so you could see it at distance. So this pot then, the one on the end, would move around a lot because of it was the anchor for the floats. So in the end pot we would put 4 stones, and we'd get these stones preferably like from Poldhu or Gunwallow, because they were slate and they were about this big around, and they were easier to. This year is what we called a nicking hammer, and you'd get, say that was a flat stone, you would nick a little groove in here and that side, and then you would tie that into the bottom of the pot. And probably 2 or 3 pots each end would have these stones in. And yeah. But
So did you have your own patches, or did you find
well, yeah, we used to have our favourite spot, but there was always a gentleman's agreement, and it did work in those days. Not so much now. All the gentlemen are gone. If, for instance, I shot my line of lobster pots down here like this, if someone then came up and they saw my marker buoy, both ends, they would keep what we called a berth away. Right. And a berth would be roughly, I would think, about 200 yards. Several reasons. One, if you get too close, you've got bait in your pot, my pots, you've got bait in your pots. The lobster there, which one is he going to go in? You know, so you. And the other thing is, if you shot down and then someone had shot over the top of you and you got out before he came out, or he probably wasn't coming out that day, then it was, yeah. So, and I think this, what what they call the berth, came from when they were drift netting for pilchards and herons. If you shot your nets there like that in a line, and someone else came along and shot fairly close to you, if the fish hit one net, it would take it in and mesh into the other. Now, you know, they're both pulling on their own nets, and they've meshed together, and there's argument, well, they're my fish. No, they're not, they're mine. So it was always this berth, like, and I would have said it was probably roughly about 200.
It was mutual beneficial to both people, really.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And, you know, the majority of fishermen kept to that as well. It's not quite like that anymore, you know. The last few years I was fishing, I experienced 1 or 2 people sort of putting their pots right on top of mine, because I suppose they thought, oh, old Barry Mundy, he knows where the lobster is, you know. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
How many pots did you work when you were fishing full time?
Well, when I was fishing with my father out of the harbour, we used to work about 150. Yeah. So we used to make about 220 of these every year. So we always had, 60 or 70 spares. But when Father retired in 1969, where have I got it here somewhere? That's the one. Yeah. Sorry. I bought with my brother, this is an ex-Breton crabber. She was 40 foot in length, and I kept that one at Newlyn. And but in the bottom of the boat, it had what they called a vivier tank, a wet well. It was flooded, but the top of the tank was sealed, so she didn't sink. But you had gaps in the like that in the bottom, so that the water could come in. And so when the boat rolled, you had this circulation, because you had to have a circulation in there, because if you put a crab or a lobster in a bucket of seawater, within an hour or so he would drown, because he'd take out all the oxygen. He'd drown even quicker if you put him in fresh water, you know. So we used to, so we didn't used to have to use store pots in those with this boat. The catch went down into the boat, and I used to go out to the Isles of Scilly for 10-day trips, but mainly after crawfish. That's what we were after. But I could carry 200 pots on the boat, and that's what we used to work.
So you'd be on that boat for a fortnight?
Sorry?
So you'd be on that boat for a fortnight?
Oh yeah. Come home for the spring tides, and then you know, just mend up any pots, come home for a few days, and then back out for the next tide. You know, yeah. We were 3 crew on that. Working that. Yeah.
I was just wondering, were all the pots made down the cove?
Yes.
I just got a vague memory that in Tremony Barn,
Yes.
one of the Thomas brothers, that's Admiral's son,
Yeah.
the middle one, not Leslie or Howard, he used to be in there making crab pots.
Yes.
And I used to get down there with him, because it's only down the road.
Yeah. Sure.
And
Yeah. No, I've heard Father say that's where.
Yeah,
Well,
that
that's where
was
Admiral
probably
and that
in the
used to make his
1940s.
pots.
yeah,
Yeah.
so what was he called?
George.
George. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, I often wondered whether I dreamt it or what.
Oh no, that's right. You know, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine they even made pots down in Troon, because a lot of fishermen lived down there, you see. You remember there was a post lady, Odge? Yeah, her father, he was a fisherman down the cove, and they lived down there. So probably, you know, they might have even made pots down there. See, all the pots I made with my father would have been in Melvin House, in the garage there. Yeah. And Dick and Herbie Gilbert would have made them there in that black shed there, and Jack and Glenn made them just behind the cafe there. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah. But strangely enough, there was, when I started, there was 3 sets of brothers. There was the Gilberts, Pascoes, and the Mundys. And one brother made the tops, and the other made the bottom. And the one that made the top was able to do the bottom, but the one that made the bottoms couldn't make the top. So when I was 18, my father said to me, "Well," he said, "boy, you've got to do the both." He said, "Because if I get taken ill, then you can carry on, you know." So yeah.
How old were you when you made your first pot?
Well, 15. Yeah. I left school at 15, as you did in those days, and yeah.
How long did it take you to learn the trade? How long did it take you to learn the trade?
Well, really, to get any speed at it, 5 years, because you was only doing it, say, from sort of November, end of November, say December, through until the end of February. So, you know, and I was never as fast as my father. if doing the tops, you know, if I made 4, he made 6. But then Father was in his late 50s, you see, so he'd been doing it all his life. Probably I might have got up to that speed eventually, but he used to say to me, you know, do the job properly, speed will come. That was his, well, which is fair enough. Yeah.
I can remember Jack and Glenn Pascoe coming up.
Yes.
Coming up Andrew,
That's right.
and they cut the withers from Trellay's Gate. The withers were right beside of the road in the pool,
Yeah.
and both sides of the road they cut them. And I can remember because I carried the withers down to the cove for them.
Oh yeah,
they
yeah,
never
yeah.
attacked them. But that was, and Ronnie Lugg was with them at the time.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was. Well, I couldn't have been more than just left school, so that was in the mid-60s somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, it would have been. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because Rodney Lugg, he sold up his the shop in the village, and in his retirement, he bought Jim Downing's old boat. You know, yeah, the Air Daddy. Yeah.
And how many boats was down in the harbour when you started?
Well, there was the 3 main boats, and they were all about 24 foot in length. Jim Downing with an 18 foot, and then an ex-Navy chap called Mr. Tamlin. He came there with an 18-foot boat. That was about it, I think. Yeah. Back before the war, I think there was 8 or 9, and they were bigger boats. They were 26 foot. Really? Yeah, yeah. But then they were worked 3-handed. But that's the reason they sold them in I think about 1938, because you know, there just wasn't the manpower, you know, to launch those boats. Yeah.
The 3 main boats had a mast and a sail.
Yes.
Was it like leg of mutton?
That's right.
That was to steady it, was it?
Yeah, when you was pulling your pots, like, you know, if the tide and, you know, you wanted the wind to get her sort of, and it made her more stable as well, you know. Yeah. Yeah.
Harry, when you used to cast your pots off, when you was out at sea,
Yeah.
where you cast them off, was that just, did you know where the crabs were? How did you know where to put them?
Well, yeah, that really, in those days, was just passed down from, you know, father to son to grandfather, you know, yeah, yeah. And it's strange, though, you've got to build up a mental picture of what the bottom looked like. Because, you know, if you were pulling a string of pots, especially after a little bit of bad weather, you might pull along 2 or 3 pots, and then all of a sudden, you know, the pots are really scuffed up really badly. So you knew you was on hard rock ground. On the other hand, you might pull them up, and out of the bottom, you'll see a load of gravel and sand going away. So you knew, you know, and you was always looking up on the land and taking...
They're marks or something.
That's right. Yeah. See,
2 marks or something.
that's right. You know, there's, yeah, like one of the reefs out there, the Bow, we had marks for that, and then the Cod Bank, which was a big sand bank, and then you had Carnandra on the outside of that. And but there's one, we used to call it Growson Quarry Pit. Well, that was Angro's farm, so you're sort of off of Soapy Cove, really, I suppose. But you line up Angro's farm with Pradanic Edland, so you're just clear of the land. So that's that mark, and then the quarry pit was in I forget what they call it now. The lizard men used to go down Old Straw. They used to go down there getting serpentine, and it does look like a quarry pit from out at sea. So you just got that just clear of the rill. See, so that would put you right here. And even 3.5 miles off the Lizard there, you know, we would be out there, you're in the full tide, and when the tide is running, the marker buoys are pulled underneath. So you've got to wait to slack water, and then the buoys come up, and you know, you might be there a little bit early, and you're on your marks, you've got your marks, and then as the tide rises, the flag just literally 6 or 12 feet in front of you. You know, you can be that precise with it. Not so good on foggy weather, mind, you know. But that's the one thing. When I bought the bigger boat, and that had a depth finder on it, you know, and you could tell whether there's little shoals of fish, and it showed the bottom. And I came up from Newlyn up to the Lizard, and in the centre of the bay there is mostly trawling ground, so it's quite flat, you know, and then all of a sudden up comes the depth finder like this, you know, showing like a rock up there. And right away I looked at the land, and well, I knew it, you know. So it wasn't telling me anything that I didn't already know. But where it did come in handy was when I went to the Isles of Scilly. I'd never fished out of there before, so, you know, then it told me exactly what was there. Yeah.
General sort of question. When do you reckon they put engines in the boats down here, in the small boats?
Well,
I mean, somebody else might know, you might not know, I don't know.
well, I have heard, I can't tell you the exact year, but the first engine, I think, was a fisherman called Sobey. And that's right, isn't it, Bill?
Yeah, Willie Sobey.
Willie Sobey. And that was a steam one, because he coal, didn't he? He used to put coal in, didn't he?
Yeah, it was coal-fired.
Coal-fired one, yeah. That was the first one. But I can tell you another story. When my grandfather had a boat built, and no, it was before that. It was the boat prior to that. But he had a engine put in, and his brother Joe Mundy, and they thought they would take their father out for a spin around with this engine, you see. So off they go out, you know, and now they're coming back towards the harbour, and he turned around to the boys, you see, and he said, "What are you doing?" "Well, we're going in the harbour, Father." "Well, aren't you going to stop that engine and row her in?" No, we're going. "Oh," he said, "you're awful reckless." Yeah. So that's progress, you see, that is.
I know my father was up in Port Harbour before the war,
Yes, yeah,
and he was a motor engineer,
yeah,
and all the lads that had little clinker sailing boats,
yeah,
he used to put Austin 7 engines in their boats.
that's right.
And they'd usually have 2 boats. They'd put a super boat in with an Austin 7 engine, and then he'd take mother out sailing in the sailing boat. And that was how I learned to sail.
Yeah. They had a lot of the car engines, and they were marinized, you know, for yeah. Okay, how are we doing?
Well, off the subject of the pots a minute,
Yeah.
some folks here will remember the Hewers hut below the
Oh.
Cove Hotel
Yes,
with an upturned boat as a roof.
that's right.
Can you tell us anything about that and why it was there?
Well, yes, there was one there, and there was another one, which was the old Coast Guard lookout, you know, which is a bit further on. You know, we got the roundabout, and you go up there about 100 meters. So there was one there right back against the edge, and had a tarred roof to it, but something like the one they got down at Cadgwith, out on the point, you know. But the one in front of the hotel, well, it's, like I say, it's still there. The walls are still there. There's all thorns growing around it now. But I think, well, I remember when I was on the parish council in about 1990, Harry Rule, the, you know, undertaker, he can remember, you know, a boat on there, upturned. But yeah, they would have gone in there, well, I suppose sit down, have a pasty and a cup of tea, and but they were searching, you know, well, always looking at the sea adjacent to the cliff, looking for the pilchards, because the pilchards would, I suppose they must have come down the north coast, and then they would come around Land's End, in around Mounts Bay, and then out, and then up around the Lizard, and up towards Plymouth. So everybody had a slice of the cake, as you would say, you know.
The pilchard fishery here was massive, wasn't it?
Oh, it was, yeah.
There was superb local stone buildings, cellars down in the cove.
Yes. Well, what people term now as the net loft, you know, which I use for making my pots and storing stuff. Well, the founder member of the Old Cornwall Society, A.K. Hamilton Jenkin, he told my father that the fishermen requested that one to be built in 1775. So I would imagine probably the other ones, like the Winch House and where the cafe is, and the cellar house, you know, which is belongs to the hotel now, you know, apartments, they probably was even older. Yeah. But when they went along the cliff looking down at the water, as the shoals came along, they were fairly near to the surface, and they were so tightly packed, and you know, the gills would have been red, and it would show in the water like a ruddy brown colour. And when they saw that, you see, they went there to where the water tower is now, because that's quite a high promontory there, and they would get their first bushes and wave them and shout the heather, and then everybody went down to the cove. Yeah.
Is that where heavy cake comes from?
Well, probably.
I didn't just make that up. I was told the other day, down Porthgora,
Yes, yeah.
that they would make heavy cake the women would make heavy cake in a slab.
Yes.
And make it like a net on the top.
Yeah, that's right.
Work.
Yeah.
And they used to have that when they had the pilchards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, while we're down Porthgora, I got a very nice painting at home.
Yeah.
Of Porthgora, and in the bay, just to the left of the slipway, there is a sailing boat. And from what you just said just now,
Yeah.
I'm wondering, because I thought, oh, that's a bit of artist license.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
put
yeah.
A sailing boat there. But I wonder if that was the one that came around to pick up the catches.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they used to call it the smack.
I'll have another good look at that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said once a week. It probably might have been not so often as that. Might have been once a month. But and they would take a lot of the shellfish up to Southampton.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
They used to store the shellfish down Porthgora in cut holes in square, rectangular top holes.
Yeah.
Cuboidal, I suppose you call it, which was always covered by the tide.
That's right.
And then there was a wooden lid on the top.
They do the same up at
Until
Port Isaac.
They got collected.
Yeah.
So I bet it was that this painting I got was done in 1893.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it could well have been.
Oh,
a
yeah,
sailing boat.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Mm. Very good.
But the last successful shot of pilchards, this is according to my great uncle, Joe Mundy, you know, that's Sam's father, and he said that they called the Heather, and he took a day off from school, and his job was to help the ladies to bring the fish from the beachhead up to the winch house there, because that, you know, and they would bulk them, which is a layer of salt, layer of fish, and they would build that up 8 foot tall, perhaps 12 foot long, 6 foot wide, and they'd remain like that for 3 weeks, while the salt would have pulled all the water out, and a lot of the oil would have gone down into a catch pit, and they scooped the oil off the top, and that was used for lighting. And then after 3 weeks, they would take them out then, and what is now Nick Mayor's garden, that was all cobbled then in those days. They put them into these special barrels that had a gap between the staves like that, and again salt fish, salt fish, and up proud of the top of the barrel, put a lid on it, and then there would be a stone missing out of the wall, and they'd put a pole in there, and the pole would come out over the lid, and on the end of the pole they hung a bully, which is a big rock with an iron hook through it, which they hooked onto the end of the pole, and that would just squash the rest down. And I was talking to a elderly fisherman down at Cadgwith, 40, 50 years ago now, I suppose, and he said to me that he'd been over here seining in Mullion, and apparently once they took the fish out of the barrel, there'd be like a big solid cake, and I think they used to export it to Italy, and again a sailing ship would turn up, and they would bore into this cake of fish just like you would a cheese, and whatever the quality was of the inside was how much they got paid for it. And that's how, you know, when some historians talk about, you know, the old smuggling, and it's all about rum and brandy and lace for the ladies and whatever, but they smuggled salt because they were getting the salt in from the salt pans in the Gironde, you know, that's south of Brittany, and the salt was sea salt, so it was top quality, but the English establishment didn't want, you know, it was a preceding Brexit, I suppose. They didn't want the import of salt. They wanted the Cornish to buy the salt from the Cheshire salt mines. But the problem was the salt from the Cheshire salt mines was full of minerals. So when they salted the fish down, it didn't cure them as good. And so they got far less for their fish than if they'd used the sea salt from Brittany. So then, like I say, they started, because the establishment had put a tax on the imported salt. So they smuggled salt, which, you know, made sense. Yeah.
Any more questions?
When was the last big catch of sardines made?
Well, in 1899. That's according to my great uncle, and he worked all day there. And you see, some years the sardines didn't come, so they virtually starved, because the first thing they did when they had a catch, they would salt down enough to see them through the winter. Because, you know, you can always get by through the summer with the vegetables and whatever out of your own garden. But they always salted it down enough. And so, yeah, I say 1899 would have been the last successful one. And the money that could be made, if they had a good catch, was good money. Because my great uncle, he was 9 years of age, and I can't say what he said to me because it's not politically correct anymore. But he worked like a slave, and put it that way. And they gave him a quarter of a man's share. Now, there would have been several hundred shares. Most of them went to the, like, Lord Belitho at Trengwayton, because he owned the boat and the net, because it was a big investment. So he would have had at least half the money. And then the hewer would have had 5 or 6 shares because he was the hewer, and so on. And so, but if you turned up and, you know, you were just labouring for the day, you got what they called a body share, which was 1 share. And they gave him a quarter of a share. And this is 1899, and that was £5. So that was the type of money they could make, you know. But like I say, it wasn't always like that. Some years they starved. But if they did have a catch and they salted them down, and if times are hard, they were living on pilchards and potatoes. If they had to have a good crop of potatoes, they would live on them 4 or 5 times a week. And it shows, really, because that's not a bad diet. And I've heard my father say his grandfather had bones in his arms and hands was really enormous. And when you think of it, if you was a child 4 or 5 years of age and you're having fish every day, and because they'd been salted and brined, when you ate them, you ate bones and all because they were soft. But those bones are full of calcium, you know. Different to the miners, who probably only lived till their 30s because they were down in the mine in darkness, very poor wages. They reckon they lived like on a barley gruel, you know, whereas on the fishermen, they were going to sea and full of vitamin D from the sun, and they're catching all sorts of fish and eating. And if you look through the parish registers, you will see that they live, some of them live 60 and 70. There are occasions of 90, and there's 1 or 2 of 103. So it shows you that diet is a big game changer. Yeah.
Right, Barry. Well, that's fascinating, isn't it? I don't know though. Some of these farmer boys, I think, did all right on their crousts.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. I thought they might have known what a yaffle though was, you know.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? Barry coming out with dialect and Cornish language words really makes it a totally fascinating evening.
Yes,
and well, yeah, we said that.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering about this young man at the front here.
Yes.
Who's into fishing. At the front, Johnny Pascoe, from the Pascoe family, the 2 Pascoe boys. Well, your grandparents or great uncle, but then followed by Jimmy. Does anybody remember Jimmy Pascoe? John Pascoe, which reminds me that Johnny's brought across tonight quite a few photographs here, which I'm sure most of you won't have seen these pics before, and they include some lovely photos of John and Jimmy Pascoe down there fishing, down at the cove. So please have a look at those, well, when we finish in a moment. I think it's the right time to give a big round of applause. Well, I'll tell you what. Barbara on the back there, Claire Garden Girl,
Yes.
said them crabs were some handsome.
Well, there you are. Well, things did taste better in those days because you had them in season.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I liken it to the strawberries you have now. You can have them any time of the year, but they're only lumps of water, aren't they? You know, but when you have them in season, they taste so much better. And that first crab in April was always, you know, worth waiting for.
Johnny, you had a good season.
Yeah, I have, yeah.
What are you catching?
Well, funny we were talking about crawfish, and you
Yeah.
have to remind me the Cornish name for them, because I love that.
Oh, gather more.
Gather more. I'd love to gather more.
Well, yeah, 'cause when I went into the cove first, you know, they would say to me, "How you get on today, boy? Did you have any gaver?" See, well, gaver is the plural of gather.
Yeah.
And yeah, they never said, did you have any crawfish today?
No.
It's always gaver.
I might start saying that to confuse people. But yeah, no, very good. They've made a comeback, which is a nice story really, because we always hear about
Yeah.
declining fish stocks, and you know, the pilchard industry is a very good example of things going quite bad. Lots of economic pressures, but also fishing stock pressures, and that's come back to quite a healthy position. So's crawfish, so we've got to keep it there now, because it's the gather make a lot of money for us. So it's been a good year on them, a good year for lobster. So yeah, it's been good.
And there's 2 boats going out from the
Yeah,
harbour?
there's two of us at the moment. Yeah, two of us. Hope possibly 3 next year, possibly another. Getting a Porth-Leven boy over, so we're enticing them to Mullion. I don't know if someone thinks another civil war's coming. Trying to get away from Falmouth and the port.
Who here remembers the boats down there with the Gilbert brothers, the Mundy brothers, the Pascoe brothers? Anybody remember them? Yeah, a few of you. Yeah. Well, and Donald there on the back row, of course, talking Porthgora. I mean, your dad was a hardy of Porthgora.
Yeah, correct, yeah. But he wasn't a fisherman.
No, but
His father was, and all the rest of the family was, but he was a carpenter.
yeah. But I remember Joe Harvey because the way he talked. You know, those are the days where if you came from Porth-Leven, you talked a bit different from folks from Mullion or Elston, and Porthgora. Well, goodness me, couldn't understand it.
You'd be worse if you went down Sennin.
All right, we'd better move on with things, I think. But have a look at everything around while you're having a bit of chat and a cup of tea in a minute, and particularly the pictures that Johnny's brought, and the pictures here that Barry has brought. And can I, and include Barry again in this, thank those who've been backing up and doing stuff tonight. So we've got Pauline, who's been doing the raffle as ever, and please check whether you're a winner or not. Mary, who's always organising the kitchen, so enjoy a cup of tea in a minute, or a dish of tea, as Barbara Harvey always said. Valda for bringing the banner. Peter for doing the camera work. It's always on our Facebook page and YouTube, so you can, please don't stop coming just because you're watching on your laptop, but it's there available.
And the delightful playing.
Oh, and the superb playing.
Yes.
Plus others who've helped, committee putting everything out to make what I hope has been for all of you a really enjoyable evening. So thanks to all of you who've helped.